Alright, today what I'd like to do is go over the cause of migraines in this webinar. I've had a lot of patients ask for this, so I'd love to share this information. Migraines is something we see a lot of, something we get unbelievable results with, so let's go through it here. Just a little bit of my experience. I have an office in South Florida. This is my beautiful wife here at our front desk. We've helped literally hundreds of people with migraine headaches. It's one of the conditions we see the most of in our office. I've seen people literally every single day with a migraine for the past 30 years, and usually within 6 to 8 weeks they have very little to no headaches anymore. So I think this is much needed information. There's a lot of people struggling out there who want to see what's causing these migraines and how to help, and that's the whole purpose of today. So let's go through this. This is not a band-aid. What I'm about to share with you is actually going to get to the main cause of a migraine. One principle I teach all my clients is this: if you don't get to the cause, something worse is going to happen. It's kind of like taking the batteries out of a fire alarm. If you just take the batteries out, yeah, you don't hear the alarm anymore, but the fire is still going on and your house will burn down. It's the same thing when you're having a migraine. Think of it like a fire alarm going off. There is something serious going on in your body. Your body is trying to communicate it with you, and what we are taught to do mostly is take the batteries out of the fire alarm. A lot of us, what we end up doing is we take a pill, maybe antidepressants, just to kind of get through our day. Some people are doing the Botox shots, which are becoming pretty popular. And yeah, while they're great because they provide relief, if you don't get to the cause and you keep doing those things, something major will happen to you. And in the case of migraines, 80% of migraine sufferers have a stroke in their life. And that's because when we go through this research, you'll see what's happening to the brain tissue in someone with migraines. So when I present our solution and what we've been doing, you're going to see exactly what happens and how it can lead to a stroke if you don't get to the cause. In order to understand what a migraine is, we kind of have to understand something called cerebrospinal fluid. So your brain does not just float in your skull. It has a fluid surrounding it because it's so sensitive. So we need this fluid. It's very important for support for the brain, but more importantly, what it does is it clears the waste products. So I'm going to play this little video for you right now so you can see what happens. This green represents the spinal fluid. It's being made in the center of your brain, and what it does is it actually flows down the back part of your spinal cord and then eventually makes its way back up around your brain, supports your entire brain. Really, really important that it does that. But can you see this video over here? See this pulsation that happens? When there's a pulsation like that, what is going on is this fluid is pulsating throughout the spinal cord, throughout the brain, and it's washing your brain of all the waste that accumulates there. Okay? The third thing that it does is it brings nutrients to the central nervous system. So it provides support. It kind of washes the brain, washes all the waste away and toxicity away from it, and it brings nutrients to the area. However, there is something called a Chiari malformation, which means some people are born with this. I want to show you this picture on the left. Where I'm drawing this line, that's the end of this skull. This structure right here, it's called your cerebellum. It's what controls your coordination and your movement. And I want you to notice it's up in the skull fully. This is normal. This is what we want to see. People with Chiari malformation, this is how they're born. See this line I'm drawing? That's the skull. Now look at the cerebellum, comes up, wraps around, but goes down through the skull. It kind of acts like a cork right here. So remember that spinal fluid which is being made up here, it's trying to get out of the skull. When it gets to this point right here, it cannot get out. So instead of it getting out, it begins to swell inside your brain and create a tremendous amount of pressure inside of your head. So someone with a Chiari malformation, some basic symptoms would be maybe seizures, depression, obviously constant pain, but one of the most common symptoms that they have are migraine headaches. Just want to show you this, what the studies look like. Here's the skull line. Here's the cerebellum coming through. This is someone with a Chiari malformation. However, look at this. This is the spinal fluid. See this big white streak going across here? That's all the fluid that's being built up in this person's head. So imagine what the pressure must feel like for that person. And again, on this picture, look at this. All this white, bright white is all the fluid. You see it up here as well on the sides. So in these people with this Chiari malformation, I mean, the pressure is just building up, building up, building up inside their head. So how does this relate to a migraine headache? Well, you can see with the Chiari malformation where the migraine would come from, just the increased pressure in the head. However, many people who have migraines may have gotten an MRI and they're told they're fine. This next step is going to show why they're not fine. This is a conventional MRI, and this is maybe what you've experienced if you've had any imaging done. You lie down, they put you in this tunnel, you have to lay perfectly still. I mean, it's a horrible feeling, especially if you're claustrophobic. But luckily in the mid-90s, this company called Phonar created this beautiful contraption, which is an upright MRI. So instead of lying down, you get to be comfortable sitting up. And yeah, it's great, it's more comfortable. What's even better is it's actually extremely accurate in its findings. You see, when you lay down, your spine is no longer in gravity. When you sit up like this person, their spine is completely different. So what we get are way more accurate results. I just want to show you one example in the low back. This is somebody on the left getting a normal MRI, probably what most people have experienced. This is your spinal cord, this dark band, and this white band is the fluid that surrounds it. As you go down here, it should be nice and smooth. You see right here this little bump? That's what we call a disc herniation. That would be probably labeled a mild to moderate disc herniation in the low back. So this person gets an MRI, they're told, yeah, you have a mild disc herniation, no big deal. Now this person stands up, gets the same MRI. Man, look at the difference. Look how much further back that spine slides. This whole vertebrae slides backward as soon as that person stands up. So here's a person told nothing, no big deal. When they're standing up, it's a major deal to that person. Now, remember, we're talking about Chiari malformations. When they created the upright MRI, they started to find something. People with head and neck injuries would go in, they'd get an MRI, they'd lay down, and everything would look pretty normal. Here's the line. Cerebellum, for the most part, maybe comes down a little bit, which is okay. So this is somebody who's told, yeah, everything looks normal, you have a mild disc herniation right in the middle of your neck, but no big deal. However, when they started getting this upright MRI, look what happens to the cerebellum. Here's the skull line. Here's the cerebellum. And look how far low that thing comes down. So, lying down, yeah, you look normal, everything's okay. As soon as you come upright, this person has a Chiari malformation. And they call this a Chiari 0 because on a normal MRI you don't see it. But as soon as you take an upright MRI, you see this person has a Chiari malformation. So the major cause of migraines seems to be this Chiari malformation. So the next question is this: what's causing the downward pulling of the cerebellum? You see, many people with migraines aren't born that way. What ends up happening is they have a head and neck injury, like a car accident, a sports injury. I have one girl who had a really bad cheerleading accident. She fell on her head, and that triggered her migraines. Sometimes it's the birthing position itself. From that position, something happens. There's a head and neck trauma, and that's what triggers the migraines. So there's a cause to this, and I want to get into that. This bone is the top bone of your neck. It's called your atlas vertebra. It is the most important bone in your body because it protects your brainstem. Many of you might remember Christopher Reeve. He broke that top bone of his neck, didn't put much pressure on his brainstem, but you can see the effect it has on his entire body. That's how important this top bone is. Now the top bone, it's really interesting. It weighs the least. It's only 2 ounces. it gives us a lot of motion. It's why we can turn our head to the right and to the left. However, because it has so much motion to it, it's very unstable. So when you have a head and neck injury, that top bone of the neck moves out of place. And here's the kicker. That top bone is actually attached to the cerebellum through something called dura mater, which is like a wrapping around the spinal cord and brainstem. So let's get into it. Here's the top bone of your neck, this red dot. Here's the cerebellum. What's happening with these people is they're having a head-neck injury. The weakest part of the neck, the atlas, is moving usually forward, and it's starting to tug down on the cerebellum, which is building up the fluid in the brain. This right here is the back part of the top bone of the neck. Here's the cerebellum up here, and you see all this right in here, all this white. That's called dura mater. That's the protection. It's actually attached to the top bone of the neck, and it's attached to the cerebellum. So when this moves out of place, this does not stay still. It comes with it and starts the pulling downward of it. Another picture of the same thing. Here's the top bone of the neck. Here are all the ligaments that also attach to the top bone and to the skull, as well to the cerebellum. We call this a C1 subluxation, or an atlas subluxation. Not only does it pull the cerebellum through the skull, the other thing you'll see is this. That top bone is protecting the brainstem, and this brainstem controls your digestion, your immune system, your sleeping patterns. I mean, pretty much it's the main circuit breaker of your body. Every nerve goes through there. So when the top bone misaligns, not only does it pull the cerebellum down, it also puts pressure on the brainstem. So many people will have different symptoms other than migraines. They'll also have maybe some tingling in their hands. A lot of people have trouble sleeping. Maybe they're a little constipated, only going to the bathroom once a day or less. Very common to see with people with this misalignment. You can see there's a major artery that goes through the top bone called your vertebral artery. One side will have a little bit of strain on it, as opposed to it being nice and relaxed like in this picture. See how they're nice and loose. So it pinches the blood flow to the brain, so it might result in high blood pressure. And the third thing that'll happen is this. You see how the head's nice and straight over the shoulders here? On this one, the head tilts to one side. If your head is tilted, your body has to counterbalance that. So this is what you'll look like. You'll have a tilted head. The shoulders will tilt typically the opposite way, and the hips raise back up to make your hips even with your head. So a really good way, if you're at home watching this video, to see if you have a misalignment is to stand in front of a mirror, see if your shoulders are off, and then lie down either on your stomach or on your back and have a friend look at your legs. See if they're balanced or if one is shorter than the other. If one is shorter, turn your head to the right, then turn your head to the left, and see if that changes the leg length at all. A lot of times when you turn your head one way, it'll relieve tension off of the brainstem, and that leg will come back down and balance out. It's a really easy way to tell if you have this misalignment. This is a real-world example of someone in my office who suffered migraines after a car accident. This is the top bone of the neck right there. We want to see this space and this space be about equal, and you can see it's not. What's happened is that top bone moved downward and forward at the same time. This view, this shows the hole on the bottom of the skull, and you can see if I draw a line straight down from here compared to there, this is the top bone right here. So you can see there's a lot more of it in this space. This top bone's also moved to the left, and this down here is probably the easiest way to see it. This green line that you see is the center of the skull. That's what we want to see the top bone of the neck lined up with. But you can see on this picture, you see this red right here, this crosshair. That's the center of the top bone of the neck. So it kind of slid down in this direction. So when I make a correction on this person, I'm very specific as to the angle, but essentially I'm making this adjustment to line that back up again and allow that fluid to drain out of that person's brain. So just to recap, what we're seeing here is this. Somebody has a head and neck injury like a car accident, a fall, a trauma, and the top bone of the neck is moving out of alignment. That pulls the cerebellum through the skull, and then all this fluid that's being made right here can't get out, so it begins to back up into the brain. The pressure inside of the skull increases tremendously, triggering the migraines. And then what ends up happening as well is you have all these toxins being made all throughout the brain naturally, and there's no fluid washing it away. So over time, these toxins build up, build up, build up, and that's why it gets worse for a lot of people, okay? Now here's a major issue here. Now you can see how when this pressure increases, it's compromising all of the blood flow to the brain. That's why it will lead to a stroke. But the newest research is also showing this is the same exact thing as multiple sclerosis. The only difference is the severity of the situation. In someone with multiple sclerosis, that fluid seeps back into the brain tissue. It'll create all these white lesions on their MRI, and it starts to kill the nerve tissue. So really, a multiple sclerosis patient isn't much different than a migraine patient. And migraines can lead to multiple sclerosis over time. A lot of people who have multiple sclerosis actually have migraine headaches as well. And this will eventually lead to brain atrophy, and you can see why. It's pretty obvious. So how to fix this problem? This is our protocol we follow. It's very simple. Most people, when we talk about realigning the atlas, they're scared. They've been to chiropractors before. What I'm going to go over is, I hope, will bring you a lot of confidence. This is a lot different than a traditional rack 'em, crack 'em, turn the head, twist it kind of chiropractor. I practice something called upper cervical care. It's a very specific form of chiropractic. We're trained in really adjusting the top bone and second bone very precisely. Makes a tremendous difference. So number one, when finding a doctor to do this, make sure they do not twist or crack the neck. Many people are used to this with their heads getting turned, twisted, or it's what you see on TV. We do not recommend this. This will lead to ligament damage in the upper cervical spine, and biomechanically does not put the top bone back into position. Okay? This over here is more what an upper cervical adjustment looks like. This guy's in great position. He's coming in at a very specific angle. The spine is in a neutral position. The head is not turned. You can see he's got his little protractor here measuring the angles of how to make the perfect adjustment on that person. Second thing, make sure whoever you go to is taking advanced images of the spine. We use a 3D CT scanner. We're probably one of maybe 10, 20 chiropractors in the world using it right now. It is unbelievable. But I've heard so many people who've gone to chiropractors who don't image the spine. They just take the head and kind of twist and pop it. They feel it. They think they can feel how the top bone misaligns. You can't. The top bone is a very advanced, a very complicated articulation. You can't just feel it and put it back in. You have to come in at a very specific angle to make that adjustment. The third thing you want to do is make sure whoever is touching you is measuring your nervous system every single visit and after an adjustment to make sure that you're getting good help. Just because you feel a pop in your neck does not mean that was a beneficial thing. In our office, we use something called Thermography as a way to measure the nervous system. It's a pretty awesome machine, very advanced. What it does is it measures the temperature on the skin, which is controlled by your sympathetic nervous system or your fight or flight system. And when somebody is healthy, they have very good symmetry. You can see the difference. We do this every visit, before, after an adjustment, if we have to make an adjustment, to make sure that your nervous system is getting healthier. And number 4, you should hold your adjustment. This is probably the most important part. When you put that top bone back into position, the longer it stays there, the quicker results you get. If you're going to a chiropractor and you're getting adjusted every time you walk in, that's a problem. That means that chiropractor is not putting that bone back into position, or they're just kind of going nuts and just adjusting over and over when they shouldn't be. Over time, that leads to very destructive habits to the spine. The ligaments, again, will become very loose. You might be damaging the nervous system, not helping. So typically, after about 12 weeks, you should hold an adjustment for an extended period of time. That's kind of our goal as people get through it. You should not be relying on us to put that top bone back into position. Over time, your body should remember where it goes. And again, there are exceptions. Sometimes somebody has a ruptured ligament and is very unstable, but for the most part, we get our people holding months and months and months at a time. Another real-world example, this was an MRI of Jim McMahon. He was the quarterback for the '85 Bears when they won the Super Bowl, and they've done some reports on him. After his football career, he became extremely depressed, suicidal, and massive migraine headaches all the time. Happens to a lot of football players. I hope you see now what's happening. These football players are having injury to the top bone of their neck. He actually has, you can see here, this is his MRI before. Here's his cerebellum coming down into this. Okay. Look at the MRI before. See all this white up here? That's the cerebrospinal fluid backing up, putting all this pressure on his brain. And look how clear it is afterwards, how much reduction he had. When he got his first upper cervical correction, it felt like a toilet just being flushed. That's what it should feel like. All this fluid starting to be drained out of the spine. Pretty amazing stuff. So he says upper cervical care literally changed his life, saved his life. Very powerful stuff. The other thing that we do is we remove all the toxicity inside the body. A lot of people with migraines, they do have a toxicity issue as well because number one, their spinal fluid has been blocked, so all those toxins have been sitting in their brain. And then number two, they usually spend years and years taking medication after medication to try to stop it. So we have to clean out this toxicity. We use protocol by Professor Arnold Ehret. He was a naturopath in the early 1900s. Download his book, Rational Fasting. It's free online. It's an unbelievable read. I think it'll change your life. But pretty much over time, you're cleaning up your blood. This is the protocol we put people on. We give them a 2 to 3 day fast, either a water fast or a juice fast, depending on who it is and their history. And then we have a diet plan that they follow to continually clean their blood. What I'll do is below this video is have a link where you can download free our protocol to follow. Really simple. I follow it. My wife follows it. I've been doing it for probably about maybe a year now and just totally changed my life. Unbelievable stuff. So I think if you follow it, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how amazing you feel. Okay? And guess what? Welcome to your new life. You get that top bone corrected properly and you clean your toxicity. Literally, most people, 8 weeks, brand new life. That's how amazing, how powerful this is. I've done this presentation literally to neurologists and other medical doctors, and you know, they're always impressed with the information, and unfortunately, they do not refer their patients in. I don't know why. It's amazing stuff. It is life-changing, and I really hope that this information has helped at least one person who watched this. This is my information. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I would love to hear them. Please contact us. PureLifeHealthCenters.com is our website. Please look around for some more information. There's our email, our phone number. If there's anything I can help you with, please give me a call. I love you all. Thank you.